Politics is changing by the day. The system is in the balance, with one senator announcing her retirement. That's what we're getting into today on Equal Matters. My man Cal, the guitar hero, on that introduction, produced the guitar. Go check him out. He's been on Equal Matters, as has his band, The Color 8. That was one of my favorite episodes that we got to do. Welcome to Equal Matters. My name is Rob Hunter. I know it's been a while if you've been following along with Equal Matters, and many of you have reached out and said, what's going on here? So a quick explanation before we get into Kyrsten Sinema, the senator from Arizona, retiring. She's an independent. It's what she had to say that really showcases how upside down our political system is. We'll get to that here in just a second. So I am a new entrepreneur, and I'm involved with a couple of different things. I work with my wife's company. She founded a company called Painted Porch Strategies, and what I do is I take my broadcast skills and I teach them to others via coaching. So here's my sales pitch. If you are struggling, getting noticed, heard, promoted, reach out to me because I would love to help you maximize your opportunities. That's what I do with Amy's company, Painted Porch Strategies, and the other company that I work with is called Earn It All. Fitness and nutrition programming around capability. That's how I train. So if you want to train, get in shape, give us 90 days. Our head coach, Adam Nail, is going to get you crazy results. So in working on these big projects with these companies, as well as trying to build my own, I've been busy. I have not been great about time allocation. So that's why there have not been any new episodes of Equal Matters, in full disclosure. But we're back at it. We've got some big plans for you. Next week here on Equal Matters, Representative Annalise Ortiz invited me out to a re-election rally that she held late last year. The episode is edited and is going to give you an inside look into a community that many media members will not give you. So next week, subscribe, and you'll get that episode automatically downloaded for you. But back to the matter at hand, Kyrsten Sinema, independent senator from Arizona, calling it quits, not running for re-election. Here's part of what she had to say.
In 2017, I warned we were approaching a crossroads. Our democracy was weakened by government dysfunction and the constant pull to the extremes by both political parties. I promised I would do my best to fix it, to protect and defend our Constitution, to listen to others without judging, to focus on what unites us, and to make Americans' lives better.
2017 was when Sinema started to run for Senate. Now, Sinema is a bit of an anomaly when it comes to politics. I met her in 2007. I had just moved to Arizona. I was working at a radio station out here, and I had a weekend talk show, Sunday nights, 5 to 7, the prime time slot that everybody wants to be in, but it was a training ground for me in a big market. And the guy that came on after me was named Jay Lawrence. So the Jay Lawrence show was on from 7 to 10, and he often had Sinema on. And she would come in and be flirty and be progressive. So in 2007, 2008, Kyrsten Sinema was what she's rebelling against now, a progressive. She was early on in the progressive movement. She was a politician that was unafraid to say that. At one point, she even called herself the proto-socialist. But as she started to gain more clout in the Arizona legislature, she started to have her eyes on the prize. So in 2012, she decided to run for U.S. Congress. And she did it in a moderate district here in Phoenix that leans Democrat. So between leaving the Arizona state legislature and becoming a U.S. representative after she won that election, she started to transform, became much more of a centrist Democrat. Because I think what she understood, despite her past dislike of capitalism, I think she understood how it works, in that without it, America doesn't work. Without capitalism, the world doesn't work, at least not as well, because we have to be free to explore our innovative ideas, introduce them to a marketplace, and hope that people will buy it. Because that's what makes economies move around. I'm doing the same thing, offering you communication and performance coaching, building an economy around that so that I could take some cash money and I can spend it on some things so that more goods can be produced. More goods that are produced, more people buy things, the better the economy is, the better our way of life is. So I think Sinema had that understanding as she aged, because when you're younger, and Sinema's 2 years older than me. I was born in 78, she was born in 76. And if I think about how idealistic I was when I first started in talk radio at the age of 22 versus where I'm at 45, you grow up with life. So that was part of what Sinema's growth pattern was. And she served a few terms, I think 3, 2012, 14, 16, and then decided to run for Senate. And she ran for Senate in 2018. And what's interesting about the seat that she ran for, it was another incumbent at the time, Senator Jeff Flake, who decided not to run for re-election. And that is what Sinema was talking about when she warned of this in 2017, the radicalization of politics. Because Flake didn't run because he didn't like Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was the president at that point. And at the time, in Arizona Republican politics, in 2018, if you were seeking re-election in a primary, you would have to be a Trump candidate. So he decided to bow out. The race got real tight. It was real close between Sinema and Martha McSally, but Sinema pulled it out. And what's interesting, too, is that Senator Flake only served one term. Senator Sinema only served one term. Both noting the change in politics. Because this is a political system that I don't know there's any other similarities in American history. I can't find any, certainly under different circumstances, but they're concerning because all the polls indicate that no one wants this election that we're going to get. And it's basically over now. Nikki Haley on the Republican side dropped out. Not that she had a chance, but we knew that Trump was going to be the nominee on the Republican side, and we knew that Biden was going to be the nominee on the Democrat side. So every poll says we don't want this. Yet here we are. And in part, what Sinema's saying is the primary system has changed so dramatically with who's involved in it, in picking candidates, that it has become more polarizing. So for Sinema to not run for re-election, she understands that she can't win. So not being able to win, what's the point of running? The same thing that Flake ran into in 2018 that Sinema's running into now in 2024. Because if you think back to all of the outrage that happened when Sinema switched parties from Democrat to independent, people were mad at her. And people were mad at her because we don't want to consider the other side in our political debate. And I was part of the political debate in this country for almost 25 years, dating back to the Bush-Gore election. So I can single-handedly tell you how dramatically it has shifted in the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. Same thing Sinema's seen, I have seen firsthand. And that's one of the many reasons why I don't work in talk radio anymore, because it just doesn't vibe with me as much as it used to because of something like this.
These solutions are considered failures, either because they're too much or not nearly enough. It's all or nothing. The outcome, less important than beating the other guy. The only political victories that matter these days are symbolic. Attacking your opponents on cable news or social media. Compromise is a dirty word.
It certainly is. And Sinema, going back to her early history, was not one that was all about compromise when she was in her 20s, maybe in her early 30s. But as she started to get to mid-30s and started thinking about expanding her career, she understood how the game worked, how life works well. And how life works is not how politics works. Because politics, I would sum up, maybe you as well would sum it up this way, as a reality show. It's not effective. It just is chaotic. I'll use Republican Representative Matt Gaetz as an example. He comes from the state of Florida. I met Matt Gaetz once. I went to the border with Congressman Andy Biggs from Arizona, and he was on this trip, Gaetz. He didn't say much. Till the end, he had an opportunity to speak, so he did. But Gaetz is a guy that likes attention, like so many others. Democrats have theirs too. And the attention seekers don't mind causing chaos because cameras like chaos, microphones like chaos. So I look at politics, and what I think about politics is it is a reality show designed to manipulate millions of people, get them as outraged as possible, get them as afraid as possible, so that what happens? Politicians win. And that's what Sinema's talking about here. And that's that big fundamental shift, is that the politicians themselves are the winners, not the American people. So let's bring it back here to Arizona for a second, because the importance of Sinema's announcement to not run for re-election is important because the Senate balance may swing right through the state of Arizona. So right now the Democrats control it, even though it's kind of split. But the Democrats have the advantage. So a guy named Chuck Schumer is the man in charge in the Senate. Well, that could change. If Republicans win in 2024 in a state of Arizona, it might be the Republicans that decide the balance of the Senate. But that's how important this race is. And that's how important the Arizona Senate seat has been in the last few election cycles. Arizona happens to be one of the fastest growing states. Phoenix, Arizona is one of the fastest growing cities. We have another city out west where my in-laws live, Buckeye, Arizona. That is even faster growing than Phoenix. So my prediction is in like 15 or 20 years, Phoenix is going to be like Dallas. Dallas is Dallas-Fort Worth. Potentially, we will be Phoenix, Buckeye and be one massive city. So as we've changed and more people have moved to Arizona from all across this country, Arizona's gone from a solid red state, as it was when I first moved here in 2007. It started to get less red. And it turned into what the analysts call purple. Sometimes it goes red, sometimes it goes blue for Democrats. But this is a state in a city that is really about to become blue, Democrat. Democrats are winning more races. The governor's office is held by a Democrat. The Democrats in our state legislature are one seat away in the state House and one seat away in the state Senate from being able to control those bodies. So as we change, our politicians have changed, our politics has changed. We're a purple state, make that a purple state trending blue. But this comes as Arizona changes, so does America. As we've discussed, and as you know, most likely, political debates are hard to have because people seem so ingrained in their positions that they're unwilling to listen, which is also what Sinema said, that it's not about listening anymore. It's just about chaos and destroying the other side.
We've arrived at that crossroad, and we chose anger and division. I believe in my approach, but it's not what America wants right now.
And that's really something to think about, because instead of Sinema trying to stay in the fight, instead of her saying, I'm going down with the ship if that's what it takes because I am right and I believe in my approach, she's not. But she's making this point as a warning, throwing up a flare into the air, if you want to call it that, to say, now is the time, America, that we, whatever side of the political aisle you happen to be on, understand our responsibility in this political process. Because my impression, again, with my talk radio background, is where we're at right now is there seems to be this idea that Donald Trump is the savior, is going to save the country on one hand, or he's going to completely ruin the country on the other hand, as if there's nothing to stop him. So that means we have to vote for Joe Biden. So I won't get too political about my opinions of either or, but that seems to sum up exactly what politics is right now. It is, I guess I would say, caustic, difficult. And the direction it's headed seems to be more down that path than coming back together and saying, look, we might not agree on all the issues, But we do fundamentally agree that something's really wrong here, that this country is not being run as well as it should, that our politicians aren't as good as they should be. Because it does seem that we do complain often about our politicians, but we keep voting for the same ones over and over again. That's where I bring it back to that personal responsibility that goes beyond voting, because that's truly the work that has to be done to right the ship, in my opinion, is that we care more, we take more action, we talk to more people, we try to encourage people that we know that we think would be good running for office to run for office. And that could be something like a city council person or maybe even a school board seat. Now, I do think more and more people are waking up and deciding that they're going to step into the arena and run. And we'll talk to one of them next week, because the story of Arizona State Senator Ana Hernandez is pretty compelling. Her brother was shot and killed by Phoenix police, and her father died of COVID about 18 months after that. You're going to hear the story next week here on Equal Matters. But it's that type of story of Senator Hernandez stepping into the arena because she was so personally impacted. That is, I think, a trend that we could use a little bit more of. Now, I'm not advocating you run for office, but think about who you would like to run for office and see if there's something that we could do about that. Because I know this is going to take a lot of work, but there's something else at play here. It's not just the balance of the Senate, but it is also the power of the Senate. So the Senate is an odd body, and it was designed to be an odd body. I guess I would call it the adults in the room. The House of Representatives, that was designed to be a bit of a rowdier place. The Senate, not so much. In the House, there's 435 politicians. In the Senate, there's 100. 2 from each state. And that body of 100 is supposed to weigh carefully what the House of Representatives does, the bills it passes, and consider them carefully before voting yes or no. But in the Senate, they have a filibuster rule. And it's a bizarre rule, but it's been in place for a while. Doesn't go back as far as the Founding Fathers, but the idea of the filibuster is that you have to have some type of compromise. Because in order to vote on anything in the Senate, officially, you have to vote to vote. It's called cloture. And in order to meet the threshold, 60 senators have to agree that, yes, we as the Senate should vote on a piece of legislation. But the Democrats, a few years ago, really tried to get rid of that filibuster because they wanted to be able to enact their agenda more quickly. 51 votes, that's all you need, instead of the 60 if the filibuster was removed. But it was Sinema who got in the way of that. But not just Sinema. Another senator from West Virginia, a Democrat, Joe Manchin, also agreed. Manchin's been in the Senate for a long time and didn't want to see it go away the partisan way, right? Same thing with Sinema. But not only is Sinema not running for re-election, neither is Manchin. What's going to happen in West Virginia is that the governor, John Justice, I think his name is, he's going to become the next senator. He's running. Probably was going to beat Manchin anyways. That's why Manchin isn't running. But now you have a very different dynamic because you don't have the last 2 senators that fought against the filibuster. And this is something that's already happened in American history. Several years ago, when the Senate was run by a Democrat named Harry Reid out of Nevada, he considered and did change the filibuster rule for judges so that Democrats could get their judges on courts with just 51 votes in the Senate. But what happened was that came back to bite Democrats in the butt because Donald Trump, as president, was able to approve 3 conservative justices because there was no filibuster for judicial nominees. Because all it required was 51 votes, which the Republicans were able to do. So the current makeup of the Supreme Court, if you trace the lineage back to Harry Reid, a Democrat, and the unintended consequences. If this Senate filibuster goes away, you're going to see something similar happen. Maybe it's the Republicans that do it. Maybe they get rid of the filibuster. I don't know what's going to happen in the Senate in 2025 and 2026, which is exactly why we're talking about this, because we could see fundamental changes with Sinema and Manchin not running. There are several other centrists that are not running as well, Mitt Romney being one of them. And I know many people shake their heads at Mitt Romney. But you're taking these people out of the equation, which means what happens? Bring it back here to Arizona. Currently, there are 3 big names running here in the state of Arizona for Senate. We'll start with a Democrat, current congressman. His name is Ruben Gallego. He is trying to align himself with the progressive wing and started to attack Sinema when Sinema blocked the removal of the filibuster. So Gallego positions to the left and says, I would absolutely vote to get rid of the filibuster if I am your next senator. So he has already done that promise, that if the Democrats continue to control the Senate, 50 or 51 seats, that filibuster, if Gallego wins, might go away. On the Republican side, there is Kari Lake, former TV news anchor, ran for governor, lost the governor's race by about 17,000 votes. She is the front runner on the Republican primary side. But there's another guy named Sheriff Mark Lamb that's running. He is the Pinal County Sheriff. So Phoenix is Maricopa County. Right below us is Pinal County. Pinal County sits between the border in Phoenix and Tucson, which is along the border, the Tucson sector. We have Pinal County. So we have Pinal County, Pima County, and then Maricopa County. It's about an hour south of where I'm at. So what Sheriff Lamb and his department do is a lot of drugs, a lot of smuggling, because it's a major smuggling route for both drugs and people, because if the smugglers get across the border, get through Pinal County, they get into Pima County, and they can start, I'm doing it backwards, Pima County is on the border, Pinal County is where Mark Lamb is. So in Pinal County, they have to deal with all of that. But here's what I like about Sheriff Lamb. I am a police skeptic. I am extremely worried and have been for years about the Fourth Amendment erosion because I think that police have too much power. So what Sheriff Lamb did, he said, okay, Rob, you're a skeptic. Why don't you get your buddy Mike Russell, and why don't you come down here and take a look? Peek under the hood. We'll show you everything. So not only did we go do a ride-along with one of their lieutenants, Lieutenant Chris Lepre, who's a really good cop, by the way. And for me to say that, it means something, honestly. He took us around and showed us drug smuggling spots, human smuggling spots, what they deal with when it comes to migration. But then they invited us back to go on a SWAT team raid. As in, Mike and I, we get to sit in the Bearcats. And this is something I'm incredibly skeptical of, how militarized the police have come. But what Lieutenant Lepre and Sheriff Lamb said is, why don't you come down? Pinal County, we do it right. And their attorney, which is one of the things I love most, is when they have these big SWAT raids or big police activity, they bring out an attorney. And they ask that attorney whether or not they're following all the rules and what they should do. They have legal advisement on scene for major police activity. And that's why they let us look under the hood, because they're proud of the work that they do. And because of that, I like Sheriff Lamb. But I'm not sure that he can win in a Republican primary. Time will tell. So we'll see how that all plays out. But you see the 3 different people and how the 3 different candidates, Gallego on the Democrat side and Lake on the Republican side, who's very into Donald Trump, and then you have Lamb, who's just got his track record to run on, they would all handle the filibuster issue differently, most likely. So that's why this is so important, that Sinema is deciding not to run for re-election, because we don't know what's going to happen here in the state of Arizona. That will and could determine the control of the Senate and the fate of the filibuster. Because what I have noticed in my talk radio career, dating back to 2000, is right around 2010, Obama was in office, President Obama, And the Democrats wanted to pass Obamacare, wanted to have what turned out to be medical insurance reform. That was the only Democrats that did that. And it's not the first time that a bill was passed, only Democrats, only Republicans, because Republicans did it, the 2017 tax cut. I don't think any Democrats jumped on board with that. The reason I bring those up is not whether I agree with those policies or you agree with those policies, is to point out that the idea of the parties working together at this moment is essentially over. Without a Manchin, without a Sinema, without a Romney. It goes away. And you think of how the media is set up now. People that pay attention to politics traditionally don't go to the other side and learn what's happening. I actually read a story that was published on the Arizona newspaper's website. And it was from a guy who says that the Trump team called him to find voter fraud across various states. And he said, I found some, but not much. Certainly not enough to swing any states, not even close. Talking like a few dozen cases of voting fraud, not hundreds of thousands. But his point in the article was not that. That was part of it. But his other point was that you will not see this article on Fox News or Newsmax. So the media system is not necessarily fact-based, but partisan-based. And it's not that they're shielding, they're just omitting, as if certain things don't happen or didn't happen. And I also noticed how much more emotional those media channels have become over the last 15 years. Steadily so in the last 8. So that political discussion on media is just not possible. It's possible in our everyday lives. I do it all the time. I have weird opinions about politics and issues, and I love talking to people about them because I love to hear what you think about them. But in that space, there's no reward for that, which is what Sinema is saying. She said more.
Through listening, understanding, and compromise, we delivered tangible results that make America safer, stronger, and more prosperous. Yet, despite modernizing our infrastructure, ensuring clean water, delivering good jobs and safer communities, Americans still choose to retreat farther to their partisan corners.
That's why she's not running. The bigger issue, concern, is where our politics goes from here. Does it become more radicalized? And I'm not even really looking at this election because I'm one of those people that doesn't want to vote for either of these candidates, if I could be frank, because it's just too much. But we don't have a choice because we didn't want to have a choice. So it comes back to this idea of what kind of country do we want? And what kind of people do we want to be? What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be somebody that listens to the other side, which is exactly what you're going to do next week on Equal Matters? Because you will hear from a community you don't often hear from and the issues that matter to them. Affordable housing, affordable health care, access to health care. And you'll get more of an inside look from people that live there. That these communities are not to be avoided. They're regular communities like the one you live in. That have got good restaurants, good people. Just maybe a bad reputation because nobody likes to go there. But what you find is that we do have a lot in common. We have this idea in our heads that this system stinks. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, whether you're a fan of Trump, you're a fan of Biden. Whether you are not a fan of Trump, not a fan of Biden. Not many people in America would say, yeah, man, government's awesome. It's doing great. Because we don't listen. Not a lot. And I have dedicated a lot of my time lately to listening. I've been honing my listening skills for the last 5 or 10 years in particular because I like to know what other people think. I already know what I think. What do you think? So are you concerned going forward? Send me an email, rob@equalmatters.com, or you can find me on social media. Rob Hunter Media is the easiest way to find that. On the gram, on the Facebook, because I want to have these discussions. Because I want us to get more involved and not just accept this fate or be apathetic to what's happening. So maybe you're not jazzed about the 2024 election. Well, what about 2026 or 2028 or 2032? If we start thinking long term and we start doing that work now of getting involved, understanding the issues, trying to find common ground, and trying to move the country in a better direction, a direction that it works, that you feel that your tax dollars are good investments, not just wasted money. Because I think the only people in this country right now that would say, yeah, government's working great, are people that get something for the government or work for the government. And that's not that many people compared to the country as a whole. So the point is, we're at a very interesting time. And we can choose to be involved in it or not. But if this is a country we care about like we say, what can we do to step up? I can teach you how to communicate to the other side, how to ask questions, how to listen. And when I do that, I find the humanity in all of it. Because in the media landscape, it appears that the humanity is gone. It's just not there. It exists to call each other names, to be as dramatic as possible, to drive your emotionality as much as possible. Because when you're emotional, you don't think as clearly, you don't act as clearly. And the favorite technique that they use is fear. Fear of the other side, fear of a virus, fear of a vaccine. Everything is about fear. Fear of Donald Trump, fear of Joe Biden. Be scared. Be scared every day. And when you're scared, that rationality goes away. That's what Sinema's getting at. And that is ultimately what I agree with her on. I don't agree with every policy that she put in place or everything she voted on, but I don't think I agree with anyone 100%. I think that's healthy. But there is reason to be concerned about where this country's headed. But when there's reason to be concerned, there are things to be done as a collective, as a whole. So I want to offer you an opportunity to have this discussion here on Equal Matters. And maybe you can have these discussions with your friends, with your neighbors. Feel them out. Hear where they're coming from. See if they agree that, wow, maybe we don't need a ton of centrists, but maybe it's a good idea to have a few centrists that act like glue and keep everything together. Because if this was a company, let's imagine America as a company for a second. I was just reading about Jack Welch, who used to run GE. And Jack Welch was a people guy. His job was not really to plan the strategy. His job was to get the right people in the right place and to make the right moves for the company, either eliminating departments, reinvesting in some, whatever it was that he thought would move the GE needle. And it moved. I forget the net worth of GE, the total value of GE when Welch started versus when he retired. It was a massive growth. So I bring that up because people matter. People that can put the people in the right places to get the right things done. Because at the end of the day, prosperity is the word that comes to mind to sum up America. Prosperous. But the goal should be for all of us to be prosperous. I sit here as one of the most fortunate human beings to ever live. I don't say that to brag. I just say that to recognize how my life has turned out. I got to pursue the career that I wanted. I get to talk with you right now, creating my own format, my own media channel. And that was all made possible by the generations of hunters that came before me. My grandfather worked like 3 jobs. My dad worked in the supermarket business, but did well enough to be able to send me to college so that I could go pursue my dreams. That's the goal. America is that beacon on the hill that allows you to be free to do what you want, so long as you don't harm anyone else's civil rights. That's kind of the boundary that we set. But not everybody has that opportunity because college costs a lot of money. Certainly a lot more than when I went to college. I graduated in 2000. The college I went to, Emerson, was pretty pricey back then, but I got some scholarships, helped reduce the cost. Dad chipped in, and it worked out very well for me, but only because I had access to my dad's hard work, who had access to his dad's hard work, so on and so forth. So I have this vision of America that it can be a better place for more people to touch on that critical element: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Because the pursuit of happiness is an individual experience. Only you can decide if you're happy or not. Only you can decide to work on your happiness or not. Only you can decide to chase that thing that calls you. The thing that I got to chase, that's leading me to talk with you right now. That is ultimately what I think America represents. Beyond the Constitution and beyond our politics, it is a land that you can carve your own path in. And it doesn't have to be that you have to be in my position. There are plenty of people who have lived their dreams that came from way worse circumstances than I did. Jay-Z is a perfect example. He grew up in a housing project in Brooklyn, New York, and turned to drug dealing. But what he learned in drug dealing was business acumen, essentially. So he was able to create his own music label, sell a ton of albums, and become a billionaire from the housing projects. So it is possible, but there's certain skills that are needed, a certain mindset that is needed. And when you learn those skills and you get your mind right, that internal conversation that you have with yourself, once you master that and manage that, you can do whatever you want. It's not easy. You bump into roadblocks. People sometimes screw you over, stab you in the back, but you got to keep going. And that's what we have to do as a country. And it's not that losing Kyrsten Sinema is a massive blow to your individual life, but it is a chance to pause and reflect and wonder what action you want to take to make this country better, to make your neighborhood better, to make your household better, your job, your employees better, because that's the goal. And if we don't decide to do that, the political system is only going to get worse. And here's something I've learned in my own life personally that I would like us to learn as a country. The longer you put off things, the more it hurts. The longer you wait to change, the harder the change becomes. We have some serious challenges in this country that no one wants to talk about except for us here on Equal Matters, and thank you for being here as part of it. The first episode we did was with Congressman David Schweikert to talk about our demographic challenges in this country. As we get older, it becomes more expensive to maintain. And you only have so many resources as a country. And if you devote 3/4 of them to Social Security, Medicare, and defense, it doesn't give you much to invest in education, building roads, things that we actually use every day. So that's what we're really up against here. Partisanship aside, Biden or Trump, they're not talking about that. Because here's why. Fear. They just want you to show up to the polls. So they're going to tell you, if you're over 65, that Republicans are coming for your Social Security. And Trump's going to say, no, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not saying we have to cut Social Security. I am saying it's going to cut if we don't do anything. That's that avoidance of pain. So what you see on media, whether you are a Democrat, if you're watching MSNBC, that's going to make you feel something. That's great. Same thing with Republicans. You're watching Fox News, you feel something. You're watching Newsmax, you feel something. But we're all going to feel the pain if we don't start conversing, listening, exactly what Sinema said. That's why her decision not to run for re-election is important. It is yet another bat signal in the sky that ultimately this country's responsibility falls to us. That section of we the people that come in all shapes and sizes from all different backgrounds. We are the ones that ultimately determine the fate of this country. I am willing to have these difficult conversations, make difficult decisions, and see if we can't work it out. Because ultimately I'm an optimist, and I believe that we can, and I believe that we will. But I believe it's going to start with you sharing this with your friends. This is Equal Matters. Say hi, Rob at equalmatters.com, or find me on social media. Don't forget, rate and review Equal Matters. That's how we grow. And I really think this is a great opportunity for us to have these discussions. But it is going to require effort on your part, as well as mine, to welcome more people into this conversation. Because if it is true that 70 to 80% of the country doesn't want a Biden-Trump rematch, then there's 70 to 80% of us that will at least entertain discussions like this. So I think our job is to find as many people as possible and have the discussion that we want to have. Until next time, have a great day, have a great night, have a great weekend whenever you're listening to Equal Matters, and stay tuned because more is coming up. So don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Once again, I'm Rob Hunter. Good night.